Thank you. I have been a scientist most of my life. In fact, I think I was born to be a scientist. I grew up in Athens, Greece, and questioned everything. I wondered what it would happen if I kept walking to the edge of Earth. Later, of course, I learned there is no edge of Earth. In school, I liked science and math. Math had a certainty that I felt drawn to. To me, it was a marvelous thing that we could use math to describe physical phenomena, to describe the complexity of the world around us with simple and elegant mathematical equations. I had a chemistry set in my room, and the kids in my neighborhood were wondering when I'd blow up my house or even the whole neighborhood. And I read the biography of Madame Curie when I was 13. And I had an amazing female physics teacher in high school who epitomized who I wanted to be. And my mother and grandmother would tell me stories about my mysterious physicist uncle who had a brilliant career in the United States until his untimely death at 36. And then at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where I went to graduate school, deep in the bowels of the library, I would flip pages learning about particle physics, which is the study of the fundamental constituents of the universe around us, and about particle accelerators, powerful high-tech machines that propel the tiniest pieces of matter to close to the speed of light. And I wondered, why do we exist? I read about brilliant physicists and about Nobel laureates, all these people who have helped define our field. And then one night I stumbled upon someone familiar. This is a picture of my mysterious physicist uncle, George Dousmanis, when he was a graduate student at Columbia University in the late 1950s. I never knew him as a person, but I got to know him as a scientist from his publications and from my professors who had worked with him. And learning about my uncle and his journey in physics, I felt the intergenerational connection to all the scientists who have been there before me, to Madame Curie, to my uncle, to my teacher. Now I understood. It was my turn to be a pioneer, a torchbearer in physics. Today, I am the director of Fermilab, America's national laboratory for particle physics and accelerator science. Today, I get to ask in my job the same questions I asked as a kid in Greece and as a student, except now I also get to answer some of them. We at Fermilab are building the best experiment in the world to try to answer the question, why do we exist? But we cannot do it alone. The question of why we exist, like so many other questions in particle physics, are profound and difficult and challenging. They take people from all kinds of expertise and backgrounds and talents and experiences to come together to find the answer. It takes more than a village. It takes more than one lab. It even takes more than one country. It takes the entire planet to do particle physics. Let me give you some examples of modern-day international scientific endeavors that you may be familiar with. The first is CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. CERN is the largest particle physics laboratory in the world and one of the most respected research institutions. And then the International Space Station. It is the largest space station ever built, and the James Webb Space Telescope, the largest and most powerful telescope ever launched in space. And right here in the Chicago area, we are building DUNE, which adds to this impressive list of international science missions. DUNE stands for the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment, and it is hosted by Fermilab. And like CERN and the ISS and the James Webb Telescope, from its inception, DUNE has been a truly international effort. In fact, DUNE is the first international mega science project hosted by the United States Department of Energy on US soil, and we're hosting it. So all four of these examples, these awe-inspiring international science missions, were created with people from around the globe, and they provide us with science that pushes the boundaries of what we thought to be possible. But let's go back to DUNE. So the DUNE collaboration is made up of more than 1,400 people from over 200 institutions in over 35 countries, plus CERN. And we are all coming together, united in the common pursuit of knowledge. And we are all pushing the boundaries of science, engineering, and technology in the pursuit of the big question: why do we exist? Well, it turns out the answer to this question may be deeply connected with the breaking of a fundamental law in physics by elusive particles called neutrinos. But let's take it from the beginning. When the universe was first formed in the Big Bang more than 13 billion years ago, scientists believe that matter and antimatter were created and in equal amounts. But if that were the case, then matter and antimatter would annihilate each other, leaving nothing but pure energy. But clearly this did not happen, because you and I are here today and we're made of matter. So something must have happened that avoided the total cancellation of matter and antimatter at the very early stages of the universe. We don't know what it is, but whatever it is, we know it is the reason we're here today. And we believe that neutrinos play a big role in the answer to this mystery. Let's talk a little bit about neutrinos. What do we know about neutrinos? First of all, neutrinos are elementary particles in our universe. In other words, they are not made up of smaller pieces. And they are also the smallest building blocks of matter. Their mass is much smaller than the mass of any other mass particle in the universe. And neutrinos are the most abundant matter particles in the universe as well. And they interact very lightly, very weakly with matter. In fact, right now, trillions and trillions of neutrinos are flying through you without you knowing it. And they oscillate. What does it mean? Neutrinos come in three types that we physicists call them flavors. But they actually change flavor as they travel from point A to point B. This phenomenon is called neutrino oscillation. If the oscillations of neutrinos are fundamentally different from the oscillations of antineutrinos, they're antimatter particles, then neutrinos violate a fundamental law of physics called charge parity symmetry. What is charge parity symmetry? It is the idea that the universe behaves the same if particles are exchanged by their antiparticles and if they're flipped over, as if the universe is looking at itself in a mirror. If neutrinos violate charge parity symmetry, if we discover that, then that would be a strong indicator of why unequal amounts of matter and antimatter were created at the early stages of the universe. And that could explain why we're here. So, to find out if neutrinos violate CP symmetry, we designed the best neutrino oscillation experiment. That is DUNE. And DUNE started with an audacious idea. What if we built a very powerful particle accelerator at Fermilab right here in Illinois that produces the most intense beams in the world of neutrinos and antineutrinos. And we shoot them 800 miles away through the Earth, so to allow timing for them to oscillate to huge, enormous detectors in South Dakota, which are located 1 mile underground. And the DUNE data are going to be shared around the globe with all the collaborators. And then the oscillations will be analyzed. If we find that the oscillations are different between neutrinos and antineutrinos, then we have a smoking gun for what caused the matter-antimatter asymmetry at the early universe. DUNE is the definitive neutrino oscillation experiment, and it truly has the potential to transform our understanding of neutrinos and their role in the universe. So in 2015, the international scientific community, with the United States and Fermilab at the helm, committed to make DUNE a reality. So 10 years into it, where are we now? Right here at Fermilab, together with our international partners, are building the new particle accelerator and parts of the DUNE experiment. And 800 miles away in Lead, South Dakota, we just recently finished the excavation of the enormous caverns that will house the DUNE detectors. Remember, neutrinos interact very weakly with matter, so the detectors are huge, 4 stories tall and wide, and as long as a football field. And engineers excavated 820,000 tons of rock from a mile underground. Just think of it. These caverns are a mile underground. And they did that entirely safely. It is an engineering marvel and unprecedented in our field. The DUNE experiment is going to start doing science in 2028. And as excited as I am to see the results it's going to produce, I am also very excited to see it turn on, to see the whole experiment start, because there is nothing like watching science unfold in front of your eyes, knowing very well that physics and probably the world will not be the same. But remember the picture of my Uncle George. Decades later, since I first saw it, I look at it again with a renewed understanding and appreciation of my heritage as a niece, as a scientist, and as a member of our Fermilab community. In the background of this photograph, there are 2 famous physicists. On the left is T.D. Lee, who got his PhD in physics from the University of Chicago under Enrico Fermi, the namesake of my laboratory. And T.D. Lee was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1957 for his studies on parity violation. On the right is Leon Lederman, the celebrated second director of Fermilab. Dr. Lederman was awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of one of the neutrino types in 1962. Both of these groundbreaking discoveries are foundational and fundamental to the Dune science. Little did I know when I first looked at this picture as a graduate student that it would be so intertwined with the mission I am destined to serve 40 years later. But more importantly, it goes to show that any scientific enterprise, as stunningly amazing and impressive as CERN and Fermilab and Dune, requires the dedication and painstaking efforts by countless people and over many decades. The success in big science, it really includes everyone, from Nobel laureates to scientists to engineers to technicians, but also administrators, students, and every single member of the public that is enthusiastic and supportive of science. Because we are all driven by the desire to answer the big questions in science. And there are so many beautiful big questions to answer, like, why do we exist? Will you be part of it? Thank you.